Prime Minister Modi has given India's long overdue ambitions to modernize its armed forces a fresh start. The administration is in contact with the United States and its allies, who are increasing defense cooperation against China. Narendra Modi, who will meet with Australia's Scott Morrison and Japan's Yoshihide Suga at the White House today for a Quad leaders meeting, is contemplating the most significant revamp of India's military since the country's independence in 1947. The efforts to integrate the Army, Air Force, and Navy, which currently operate with little coordination, come as the US and UK partner with Australia to deploy additional nuclear-powered submarines in the Asia-Pacific. Last month, the Indian Army unit in charge of the Pakistan border was ordered to develop a strategy for integrating with the Navy and Air Force by a newly constituted Department of Military Affairs. That model will be copied across the country, with the entire military functioning under a new operating structure by 2024. According to the officials, who did not want to be identified. In the case of a crisis, a more unified Indian armed forces would make it easier for the country to connect up with troops from the US and its allies, which is a fundamental component of the AUKUS alliance announced last week. The US, Australia and UK involves interoperability in a range of defense areas, something India currently lacks within its own forces. David Brewster, a senior research fellow at the National Security College of the Australian National University, who wrote the book India as an Asia-Pacific Power, said, "The Quad partners have previously found that they can only exercise with one Indian service at a time. For example, the Navy but no Air Force, or Air Force but not Navy. And this severely hampers cooperation." For decades, Indian authorities kept military command and power separate, to avoid the coups that were formerly common in the region. While bureaucrats and military officials have opposed unification proposals since the 1990s, mostly because of territorial concerns. The current structure is proving to be a disadvantage in dealing with China, which adopted a model similar to that of the US and Australia in 2016. Reorganization plan. Officials say the restructure will result in at least 4 theater commands. One in the west, focusing on Pakistan. Another in the east, focused on China. A marine command for the Indian Ocean region. And an air defense command. For the time being, the restive northern part of Jammu and Kashmir would be exempted. The move is intended to allow India's military to operate smoothly over land, sea, and air. To tackle threats along its disputed borders with China and Pakistan, the theater commands would pool warships, patrol craft, troops, and fighter planes, as well as collaborate with other missile and gun regiments that have a network of ground radars. With approximately 2.1 million troops, China has the world's largest standing army. India is second, with a bloated ground force of 1.2 million regular soldiers and 960,000 reserves, whose wages and pensions take the majority of the military budget. According to the Indian Army, grouping along theaters will save around a third of the expense, while centralizing control in a single office. According to Aneet Mukherjee, an associate professor at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore, said, India's segmented approach to training, planning, and operations generated mismatch when working with other more modern forces. The theaterization of the Indian armed forces could imply a considerable departure from the current organization, a shift that experts believe is necessary for future warfighting. What is theaterization? It's a concept that aims to combine the capabilities of the 3 services, Army, Air Force, and Navy, and make the best use of their resources during conflicts and operations. The theater commander will be in charge of certain theater commands or units. Depending on the role, such commands are anticipated to be under the operational direction of an officer from one of the 3 services. The restructure will result in at least 4 theater commands. which I already discussed. Most leading militaries, including those of the United States, Russia, China, United Kingdom, and France, function as per the theater command concept, with the idea of seamless integration among the land, sea and air forces, for better coordination and response. This will allow India's military, able to operate smoothly on land, sea and air, to tackle threats along its disputed borders with China and Pakistan. Air Force opposed theaterization. In the last 5 years, the Indian military has encountered various problems, and it is uncertain whether they have been able to meet those challenges. Officials said, the Indian Air Force, in particular, has opposed the concept of multiple theaters, arguing that its limited resources will be spread too thin if it is unable to respond to threats in different parts of the country. According to a senior officer, the three services still lack a common secure communication network. As evidenced in 2019, when Indian Air Force jets fired missiles into Pakistan to destroy a terror training camp in response to a suicide attack in Jammu and Kashmir. Indian Army units were put on alert, but they were not told why or what to expect. While India's military reports to elected leaders, the three basic services have developed rivalries due to a long tradition of political non-interference, but has strengthened the army, which accounts for more than 60% of the entire military budget, resulting in a greater focus on land borders rather than building the capabilities to operate in the Indo-Pacific waters. According to some analysts, the problem with India's restructuring so far is the propensity to entrench army control over the defense force and a limited concentration on continental defense. The analyst said, this might mean a reduced capability of Indian armed forces to project power around the Indo-Pacific region in cooperation with the Quad partners.